So, since it's World Book Day, I'm talking to the Galway author, Marguerite Tonery, and we're going to have a little quick fire round about why she became an author and how she became an author and talk about her business. So, hello, Marguerite.
Hi, how are you doing, Gemma? It's great to hear from you again.
I know it's great to get talking again and actually be in communicating with people other than my family in
Yeah,
times like this.
lockdown nightmares. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So, my first question to you is what made you want to become an author? And more importantly, what made you want to become a children's author?
Okay, this is a story now. This is a story and a half. Are you ready for this story?
I
I
can't
never,
wait.
I never thought I'd be an author. Never thought I'd be an author. It was never an ambition. I grew up in quite a business household. Both my parents were self-employed business people. Around the kitchen table, there's talk about business, never talk about books or arts or creativity or stuff like that. Well, creativity and entrepreneurship was always there. But um, I went to college. I did a degree in biochemistry. I did a degree in psychology. I did a master's in psychology. And I was on this other train, and I spent a lot of time around horses. And there was always a girl there was this girl that came into the yard and she learned how to horse ride and she was doing that. And I always told children stories when they came into the yard. I always tell children stories. I make them up. So this girl came to me and she said that she's going back to Poland and she was really upset. And she said, I'll never hear another one of your stories. And I thought in my own head, well, maybe I'll write down a story and then she'd have one. She could bring it back with her to Poland. And I started writing Caffeus Earth, the first book in the Caffeus series. You can see it down here. And the first book in the Caffeus series, Caffeus Earth. And it just like, the words just flowed out from somewhere inside me and they just, I couldn't type at the speed the words were coming. Do you know that kind of way? And it became a book. And I kind of caught the bug for writing. And I just absolutely, completely and utterly fell in love with writing. And it was completely by chance. It wasn't this dream come true. It was just completely by chance. I fell in love with writing. And I haven't fallen out of love with it. So that's what brought me to this profession. And I love it. I love everything about it.
That's amazing. God, isn't it amazing how things just fall into place with writing and everything?
Yeah, it's life is very strange like that. And I think sometimes I have been at fault because I haven't gone with the flow. There are many times in my life where I've been determined, no, this is the career I want, this is what I need to do to get there. And I think sometimes, I think often, if you're flexible like a river, if you move like a river and you move around, if something is too tough, then move away from it and go in another direction, and you'll find maybe a better life for yourself. And I wasn't reared that way. We're not reared that way within the Irish education system. Like nearly in first year, or definitely by junior cert, you need to know what you want to do in college. You know what you want to do the rest of your life, and you're only a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and it's always linear. But life in itself isn't never linear. And it's just, we get that kind of, and I had that mindset that I need to do this and then do that and then and everything will be grand. Doesn't work like that. I think everything is grand for right now and make the most of each day, and just when opportunity comes, it might not be what you were planning on having in your life, but take your opportunities, and you never know what kind of a life you'll have. So I think that's what Caffeus has taught me, or writing has taught me, being an author has taught me.
Yeah. So, you know how you just fell into writing Caffeus and you couldn't stop? Did you plan to do a series when you finished that first book? Or
yeah, because the first, I could see like 8 books in the distance. I could see like all of what was happening, and there was kind of like Eliza was 8 and Jamie was 9 at the beginning of the series, and I kind of wanted to get them to college. So the 8 and 9, 9 and 10, 10 and 11, 11 and 12, 12 and 13, as we go through the series, they're getting a little bit older, because the children who fell in love with them, with Caffeus as an 8-year-old, they want to know, they're now 9 and they want to know, and 10 and 11. So they're growing up. So the series grows up with them. And like Eliza and Jamie have a lot of kind of there's a bit of sibling rivalry there. There's a lot of different complexities. And I think we often don't give children enough credit for how they can overcome so many complex relationships and complexities and stresses in their lives. And they have all of that there, Eliza and Jamie, and they still come through, you know, and they're there for each other. Even though they might kill each other sometimes, they're there for each other in the end, you know. So it's, yeah, I just saw a series, I saw it happening, you know, in front of my eyes. Now I'm at book 6 and I said, okay, that's the end of the series, but I do have another 2 books in my head. But it all depends on if the readers want those extra 2 books. So I'm not producing another one this year. But I was very lucky. Kathy's Time, the 6th book in the series, was rated top 10 of Irish children's books for 2020 by Litbox. So I'm very lucky. Like, it's been great, you know. It's an honor, you know. It's something that you never imagine happening, and there it is.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted.
Do you know how this is a series?
Yeah.
How would you feel if a film director or screenwriter was to take the books and make them into a film?
Oh yeah,
Like
thank
Harry
you very
Potter.
much, Steven Spielberg. So yeah, it is a fantasy adventure series, so it is kind of like, I don't want to keep, it is kind of like Harry Potter. I might as well say that, and it's not in terms of its different style of writing, different style of book, but it is in the fantasy adventure realm. And the children do grow older with each series, you know, like the Harry Potter series in that sense. So it's something that could lend itself, I would think, to the screen. All the children, when I go to schools, they're asking me, when is it going to be on a film, you know? And I'm like, oh yeah, any day now, any day now. So yeah, any day now, Gemma. I'll put that out there to the universe. Some famous person pick up this book, read it, and hand it to a really good director. I'm waiting for you to do that. Please do it today. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely would be brilliant to the screen anyway. And I think any screenwriter would be lucky to look at these books, because I wouldn't say you'd have to change much at all. So you've wrote stories for children. Would you ever think about writing stories for older like audiences, or would you stick to children's books?
Older people are just boring. No, I love children. I absolutely love children. Like I was just this morning, with this being World Book Day, I was on a Zoom call to St. Nicholas's Primary School in Galway City, where I have also a picture book called COVID Monsters Visit. And I was reading the picture book to the kids, and they were like silent, and they're just turning the pages when it came to the next piece that I was reading. And I looked up for a second, I thought, oh my goodness, this book is good. Because to hold a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old's attention, it needs to be good. So they turned the pages and they were immersed in the book. There was silence. And I thought, fantastic. You know, I've made it. You know, no, it's lovely to see children enjoy books. I love children. I just love them. I love being around children. I love their energy. I love their creativity. I love their temper tantrums. I love tears. I love when they pull the house down as well. So I love kids so much, but I'm sure there will be something at some stage out there for adults. But at the moment, I'm having so much fun with children that I don't see it happening in the next couple of years. But I'm just loving what I'm doing, you know. So maybe an adult book when I finally grow up. That might be, that might not be for another while. I don't tend to grow up that easily.
Oh no, sure. Age is just a number. Like, that's all it is. It doesn't mean anything.
I think it's important to keep the fun in your life and to keep the kind of the childlike nature, you know, because life
Definitely.
is quite tough. You might as well enjoy eating Smarties, you know, when you're 80, you know. So
Yeah, exactly. And your book, The COVID Monster, what made you do it? Did you just see a gap in the market, or were you like, I have this story in my head I need to put down?
No, it was a case of the economy, everything is shut down. The economy had shut down. Everything is shut down. And I was looking over at Italy, and there was, oh God, the amount of people that were losing their lives to COVID in Italy. And I just thought, this is so stressful for people, adults. Imagine what the children are going through and they don't even understand it. And my friend's little girl was 3, and she was kept on talking about because at the time it was Corona, the very beginning. and they were just talking about Corona. So she said the Corona monster. So she come up to me and she said about the Corona monster, and she didn't understand it because they think of things in terms of monsters, or they can't think of them in terms of a virus, or they don't. That concept isn't there for a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old. So she was talking about the Corona monster, and she asked me one day. She said, "Did the Corona monster?" She called it. "Did the Corona monster lick your face?" And I said, "No, he didn't lick my face." And I just thought, because she knows that the dog isn't allowed to lick her face. And because if the dog licks her face, it could be, it's not hygienic, that she could pick up something. And she was equating that to COVID, and then COVID must be a monster, and then he must lick your face. So I said, the poor kids, and the parents were getting stressed because the kids, they didn't know how to tell the children what it was about. And then the children were getting the stress because their mommy and daddy were getting so anxious, and it was just a mess. So I decided, look, at these kids really need something. The parents of young children really need something to give them. So I wrote COVID Monster's Visit, and COVID Monster became a big fluffy teddy bear type of a monster. I don't know if you can see it well there. And I said it was something simple, like I wrote it in the words of a child. So it's like, I heard a story the other day of a monster, and COVID's his name. He's big and purple and has a fat belly that wobbles when he walks, and that's not telling. He has squishy hands and squishy toes, and where he walks, no one goes. So it's kind of that feel for the children, that they have an idea of COVID monster. They can see, you can put it outside of themselves, so it's not fear. And it's just a case, COVID monster wandered away from home, and his mammy has to call him back home. He's wandering away, he's squishy hands and squishy toes, and putting his squishy on the garden, the playground, swings, everywhere we love to go, he has his squishy left. So, and then the simple things, it teaches them to wash their hands, social distance, and about why they can't go to Granny and Granddad's house. COVID monster might turn up at the house, Granny wouldn't like it at all, and Granddad would get so grumpy about it, So it's that kind of way, just putting it in the words of a child, and making it not such a bad thing. And then at the end, COVID monsters, mammy calls them back home, and they can go back to the playground and have fun again. So it's simple things like that, but putting it into the language of a young child to try and help children. So we translate it into Irish. It's in English, Irish, German, French, Spanish, Italian, Estonian, and Chinese. So it's getting out across the world, and it's doing very well. So I'm delighted with that. I'm really, really delighted with that. So
yeah. What I love about the COVID Monsters book is at the back you have the do's and don'ts. And I think that's great for kids to get like active, like, okay, we can't do this for now, but we can do this. Like it's just a bit of like, it's like active learning as well for them, as well as like calming them down.
And I think that's really important, because if you feel like if you have some self-efficacy, like if you feel like you can do something, like, okay, what can we do in the COVID time, but what can't we do? But we can do all these other things. And like, I can write a letter to Granny, I draw a picture for Granny, and we can send it to Granny in the post, or, simple things like that, and they're really important. And it's just self-empowerment. So you don't feel like, so the anxiety doesn't take over, really, it's really important.
So since today is World Book Day, what do you do to celebrate World Book Day? Do you read? Do you write?
I jump out of bed in the morning and go, yes, it's World Book Day. And World Book Day there are two different types of World Book Day. One now, today, for UK and Ireland, and then there's another one in April for the rest of the world. So we can celebrate it twice. But World Book Day is fun because I like it, because I always spend time with children reading from my books on World Book Day, and I love that, because they're your readers, they're the people who want to know all about your stories. So I love that about World Book Day. The other thing that we do on World Book Day is have as much fun as possible. It's an excuse to do funny, crazy, literature-related things. You're allowed to be a reading geek or a reading nerd on World Book Day. One day of the year that you're a hero. So it's fun. You can have fun. As a reader, you can have fun. As a writer, you can have fun, So it's just talking about books, talking to people, celebrating everything about books, you know. It's good fun.
Yeah. So if you were to dress up as like your favorite character from a book, who would that be? I know it might be hard to narrow it down, but
Um, the first, actually, I'll just be honest with you. The first character that came into my mind is Eru, the dragon, the large white dragon from Capheus. This is the first thing that came into my mind, and this dragon Eru is one of the three goddesses of Ireland, and in Capheus, Capheus is the fantastical world of light, and it's the spiritual home of Era, so our Ireland, you know. So the children live in Era, the families in Era, but they go into Capheus, the fantastical world, and that place holds the language, the culture, and the mythology of Era or Ireland until Era is ready to reclaim it. And in there you have like Bamva, Fodla, and Eru, which are three dragons, but they are the three goddesses of Ireland. And Eru was named after, or Ireland was named after Eru. And she's a powerful dragon, but it's such a complex character. She's such a complex character in the story. And you see, they can pass through the world. So they can come from Capheus into Era or Ireland, and they can move over and back. So the children can go to Capheus, and the mythological creatures of Capheus can come into. And it's so fun because you have such crossing over. But when the dragons cross over, they become human. So like in Capheus spirit, this big and powerful dragon got trapped in Ireland or Era, and he was a warrior dragon, you know, and he got trapped in Era, and like it was quite funny because he ended up butt naked in the woods outside Eliza Jamie's house, and it was like, oh, and he was like struggling, how the hell do I walk as a human? I've not been a dragon, and there was a whole kind of identity crisis he went through in that book. And then we have like a gargoyle, and the gargoyle is called Crochor for fun. So he's called Crochor, and he came from this place, you know, this land to the south, you know, and he arrived in Era, and it was that he came from what you call it, Paris, from the cathedral in Paris, Notre Dame cathedral in Paris, and it was like there's a whole complexity there. And look, I love the book series, like there's such fun in them. But yeah, that character Eru is, I dress up as her.
I was just going to say, it does sound like you just love the book so much.
Yeah,
like
I do.
It's great.
I love
because sometimes, you know, you'd be looking at authors on about their book and be kind of like, yeah, I love it, but you can just tell you just love it so much. Like it is your little baby of a book.
It is your baby, you know, and it's kind of like, yeah. And it's very difficult. Like, you know, being an author isn't the easiest thing in the world, because you're bearing your soul onto the pages of a book, and then you're saying to people, judge me at will. And you're like, oh, I hope it's okay. I hope they don't slate me for this book. But I've been very lucky, thank God. I've been very lucky. But I love what I do. You know? In that sense, it's because you love what you do, you know. But there is the nerve-wracking piece of it as well. So, but yeah, I love the story. Yeah. I'm dying to find out what happens next for Eliza and Jamie, but I can't. I'm going to withhold. I'm not going to write a book this year. I wrote 2 books last year. Slow down, you know.
I get you, yeah. And as like an author, what advice do you wish you had when you started like out writing?
I think for me, it's I think everything in life is about fear and courage. I think I was afraid to ask for help because I was afraid that people would have thought the book was crap, you know, the first book, because I didn't know. So there was that fear, like I kind of was afraid, well, oh Jesus, who will I give the book to? Who will I give the book to? And I was nervous about it, you know, I was really kind of afraid about it. But I think never be afraid, because a lot of authors I met then beyond Capheus were afraid. And I thought, this is something I felt, are you okay giving your book to people, because you don't know if they'll actually enjoy your book or not, or you don't know what the story is, what's going on internally from that for the author. You really don't know. And I suppose for me, it was fear was a big factor. And I wish I wish I had the confidence now back then when I started, that I could ask more people, I'd be okay with. Now, in saying that, I had a lot of fear, but I had a lot of courage, because I self-published Capheus Earth, and I asked David T. Wenzel, the man who illustrated The Hobbit, to illustrate the cover of Capheus Earth. And like, that was a big move, and he did it, and he loved the book series. And I did a lot of courageous things. I got on the radio, I put the books in the independent bookshops in Ireland. I went into schools and read to schools and sold the books to school children. And like, I did a lot. I put in the hard graft, yeah, but I wish I had not been so afraid. But we're all afraid of something.
Yeah, well, I definitely say a lot of aspiring authors could take a leaf out of your book. Like, as you said, going into schools, going on the radio, asking a really well-known illustrator to illustrate the books. Like, well done, like, amazing.
You have to do as much as you can, to help yourself as well,
Yeah. And you mentioned self-publishing. So you own Tribes Press in Galway. What made you want to do that?
And it was purely down to what happened was, there was an awful lot of authors coming to me at different events I was at, literature events and so on and so forth, different books, wherever I was selling books. There was authors always coming up to me, and they were saying, I have a book, I want to publish it, I self-publish it, I don't know how to go down that road, I don't know what to do. And I thought, well, I do know what to do. And I was giving them information. Like, it was a steep learning curve for me. I had lots to learn along the way, but I had learned a lot, and I had that information. And I suppose there were a couple of other factors as well. Like, I was in a situation where I sustained a head injury, and I couldn't go into schools anymore, and I had difficulty reading. My reading fluency was a lot poorer, and I was in a situation where I needed financially to change tact, and a friend of mine said, well, I hate the job I'm in. I absolutely hate it, and I love books. So let's open up a business together. And I said, but I'm not physically able to do that, because I have been struggling with my head injury. And she said, well, I'll do the hard graft, and you just tell me what I need to do. And I said, are you sure? And she said, yeah. And so the two of us opened Tribes Press, and then, so she did all the work, and then we had a lot of support then beyond that from different marketing interns and so on. And that's what really, basically, sometimes you need a push to get you to do something, and that was the push for me. So yeah, so that was that. So that was the story with Tribes Press. That's how it opened. It was like necessity is the mother of invention. I knew that I couldn't get into schools. I knew I couldn't go to book fairs anymore because I was too unwell to do it. I knew there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do. I couldn't write a book for 2 years. There's a lot of things like that. And so I had to do something different. So that's what I did.
Wow, you kept going for yourself.
What do you do when your back's against the wall? You have no other option but you just to keep trying, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And they say you shouldn't work with people, but how do you find working with your friend?
Do they say that?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. I grew up in both my parents were self-employed, so I grew up in a bed and breakfast. My mom had a guest house here at home, and so I grew up working within a family setting. Like, we all had different jobs to do, and my dad had his other with horses. And I think as long as you have good boundaries, you're fine, because as long as I know this is what I'm doing, and I won't be commenting on what you're doing, but this is just what I'm doing, and you know what you're doing, and everybody knows what they're doing, then you don't have any crossover. And when you don't have too much crossover, you don't have too much tension. So I didn't have a great difficulty. I learned that early on. I learned that around 7 or 8 years of age, because any time that anybody tried to tell somebody else what to do, it ended up in warfare when I was a kid. So everybody did their jobs to the best of their ability. And if everybody does their own job, then it all works out really well. So no, it was fine. I actually thought it was really good. We didn't fall out or anything. We're still friends, best of friends, you know, so.
That's good. And who came up with the name Tribes Press?
Well, the name Tribes Press was a combination of, well, I was trying to think of a name, and my friend couldn't think of any name, and she said, I'd leave that now, you can think of a name. And I ended up trying every kind of name I could think of under the sun. And then I rang up a friend of mine and I said, Anne, I'm trying to think of a name for the publishing house. And her husband's name is Donald. And she said, wait, and I just asked Donald, he was walking through, it was just after coming in from being out on a cycle or something. And he was walking across the kitchen. He said, Donald, what do you think Marguerite should call her new book publisher? He said, Tribes Press, of course. I had never even thought of Tribes Press. He said, Galway is the city of the tribes, Tribes Press. So that became, there wasn't me who thought of it at all. It wasn't my moment of creativity. It was Anne's husband, Donald. So thank you, Donald Quilty. So he hasn't for a share in the business, so I'm all right so far, so good.
He can't take you much your worth, so yeah.
He hasn't taken all my millions. Yeah, so that's how Tribes Press.
And you named COVID Monsters Visit and Cafes. Where did them names come from for your books?
Well, seriously, the COVID Monsters Visit was just from that little child, and she was Corona Monster, go lick your face, and I said, "Oh, sure, I'll call it COVID Monster and COVID Monsters Visit" when he came to visit, because to make it easier for children. So it's just a visit. He's not staying forever, you know. So it's just a visit. He'll be gone again. So to make it easier, and Caphis, Kaz is Sanskrit for light. I saw Fi as the root for fantasy somewhere in some language. I can't even remember which language it was the root word for fantasy. It's been a while now. And then so Kathios is just a lilt, you know, Kaz Sanskrit for light, Fi for fantasy, Kathios. And then Kathios is also in the book, it's the fantastical world of light. So it just married, it just worked, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how it became that. And I think if you have a word there like, I don't know, what's C.S. Lewis, what's C.S. Lewis? I've gone from me, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. What was the name of the Narnia, sorry, I couldn't, it just went from me there. Narnia, you know, you always remember Narnia. So I didn't at this moment, but you do always remember Narnia. And it's just a made-up word as well. And sometimes a made-up word is fine. That's enough. I just want the Caphis.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that it's something, 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 and the la da 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 da. I just want to know one word, Caphis. There you are. You're done. So you can get. You're pointed in that direction in the bookshop. There they are.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Short and sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know you've said you can see 2 more stories with Caphis for Eliza and Jamie, but have you ever suffered writer's block, or do you believe in writer's block?
Gee, don't jinx me now. Writer's block, I think, no, I haven't. I think though the writer's block often happens when you're just purely exhausted. Sometimes, like when I'm writing a book, they usually just flows from beginning to end, but there's always a time in it where you just kind of, you have a burst of energy and then you run dry in terms of you're just exhausted. You need to give yourself a good night's sleep or 2 nights sleeps and you're back in and you're on the road again. I think a lot of writer's block is just purely exhaustion. But I also think though, because I've met a number of writers and I just kind of, who have it and they say to me, I have this, and I've never really experienced it as such. And please God, I won't, touch wood. But I think though, if you initially write the story of your life, and just write your life story, everything. And it's not something that anybody will see. Just write it. It's quite cathartic because you release a lot of stuff that, emotions and thoughts and judgments and inhibitions by just writing the story of your life. And at the end of that, when you have written the story of your life, you've bared your soul onto a page of all that you are as a human being. And it has been cathartic because you brought up traumatic memories or whatever it is. Everybody has traumatic memories along the way and different things that happen. And you release all of that. You're left with a sense of freedom that you can really write about anything. You've written about everything that is so deeply personal to yourself that if you've done that, then you can write about anything after that, and that's something that you can throw in the fire if you want afterwards, or keep it until you're 90 and look back on it then. But it's not going anywhere, but it's quite cathartic. And once you've released all those inhibitions, I think a lot of inhibitions are, you can only go to places in your stories where you've been to in your life. So you can only bring a person to that depth when you've been to that depth, so so I think if you write the story of your life and lay it all out there and then go and write a book, the writing would be a lot easier.
Yeah. So do you know, as an aspiring writer now, someone who's trying to become a writer, do you think they would have to experience a lot to be a good writer? Or do you think you can experience like just little things? Or do you think you have to experience life for like the worst and the best? You know what I mean? Do you know some people might not have and like have much life experience or that by the age they're 20, but
yeah, I met a boy here once who had written a book, and he was 12. I think he was 12 at the time, and I think he was 11 or 12 when he'd written the book. And he'd written the book, but the book reminded me of Minecraft. And I turned to him and I said, "Do you play a lot of Minecraft?" And he goes, "Yeah." And and his father said, "How did you know that?" I said, "Because it's very much a Minecraft book." He's created. Do you know in Minecraft where you create your environment, but there's no emotional depth to that environment. It's just A plus B equals C. But A plus B plus D plus X plus Y plus Z probably equals Z in real life, because you have to go through 101 different experiences before you actually reach that destination you're hoping to reach. So I told him to come back when he's in his 20s. Or before then if he can, but come back when he's in his 20s, live life, experience life. You don't have to experience huge traumas in life to experience life. So, you just have to be able to get in touch with your emotions, get in touch with yourself, and to own your thoughts, to be aware of your thoughts and to own them. These are my thoughts. Okay, they're fine. A lot of people have those thoughts, but to be okay with them. So you don't have to have gone through a huge amount, but you do need to have a capacity to connect to your emotions, because emotions are the crux of the story. You want your reader to feel what you feel. You want to bring them on that journey, but if there's no connection to the emotion, they won't continue reading. So you don't have to experience huge things in life to know that, to feel, but
yeah.
you have to feel to be able to write well.
Yeah. Is there any book within the last like even 10 years that has really like hit you at home, been like, oh my God, wow, brilliant read, like, made you feel something?
There was a book I read when I was in college. I read a book in college, and when I was supposed to be doing other things like studying for my exam, and I remember sitting in the reading room and just reading this book, and it was Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And it's a really thick book. It's quite a big book, and I read it in like just a few days. It wasn't long, but I thought it was quite a profound book in that I always thought there was a mystery to other cultures, but then there isn't really, because it's just the same as what we'd experienced ourselves. There was nothing in it that was mind blowing. And then I remember reading a book after that, Autobiography of a Yogi, you know, and I thought, because there's a lot of different influences now, Western and Eastern culture are colliding, or coming together, collaborating more so than colliding. And I suppose any book that I can read about another culture, it helps me to understand that we're all the same. So I think there's always that. I think it's really important as well. I think it plays a huge role in my life. I kind of feel that, because in Tribes Press we have Russian, Russian, French, German, Spanish, Chinese, Estonian. We have a lot of mix of cultures in our team, and I just think that that's the profound piece for me in reading. If I read something from another culture, I remember when I was a young child, I read a book when I was 12, and it was a book that actually a guest left behind when we had bed and breakfast, and I cannot think of the name of the book, and it is The Alchemist. I read that when I was 12, and that was kind of a book that kind of again showed me another culture, and showed the profound part of all of these things is that we're no different to anyone else, and no one else is really really that different to us. And that's, I suppose, any book that shows a cultural differences, I love them, you know. So I could name a good few books, but they're all about, you know, when I read about a different culture, I fall in love. I fall in love with knowledge. I fall in love with knowing that the world is a beautiful place. You know, so.
Yeah. Very profound.
Simple answer enough, but sure, look.
No, it was profound and philosophical, I must say.
Okay.
But I think that's all I have to ask you. It was great.
Well, thanks a million, Gemma, for the conversation. And I hope that you enjoy World Book Day and you get to read all of the Cafe series all in one day, and COVID Monstrous Visit, and that you tell everybody you know all about the books. And wish you a lovely day. Take care.
Bye. And you too. Thanks a million, Marguerite.
Bye.